Did it move? Yeah, I think it's on. I just hadn't projected fully. This meditation comes with a disclaimer. There's a couple of spots in here where I actually attempt to sing a cappella, and I am not a singer. So I'm going to inflict on you my singing voice this morning. And this is a true story, believe it or not. My last church I had in Kansas, I actually got kicked out of my own church choir. True story. And the choir director was actually a friend of mine. She came up to me after church one Sunday and kind of sheepishly said to me, "You know, Pastor, it would really be better if you didn't sing in the choir." I wasn't that disappointed. The only reason I sang in the choir was because they only had like 1 or 2 men, and I thought they needed at least one more man up there. But so it didn't hurt my feelings. But it may hurt your ears this morning when I do the couple of little a cappella spots. All right, music has been an important part of movies ever since movies came into existence. Even in the time of silent movies, music played a critical part in the movie watching experience, because you would go to the movie theater and the movie theater would actually have someone in the front of the theater playing an organ while they showed the film, and that enhanced your movie watching experience. And of course then when sound came along, music was a really important part of the sound movies. If you think of all the great movies, directors have often asked composers to write special music for that movie, for different parts of the movie. I'd be willing to bet, and I would love to, if I was technologically proficient, I would have tried this out this morning. I would be willing to bet that if I played the theme music to a James Bond movie, Indiana Jones, Gone with the Wind, Casablanca, Titanic, I'd be willing to bet that probably almost everyone in here could identify the music that goes with the movie. Because it's just part of the experience of watching those movies, and it's so ingrained into us, the soundtrack of those movies. A university study in 2009 revealed some very interesting data. They got some people into a room and they showed them pictures. One picture was a picture of a happy face, one was a sad face, and one was neutral. Then they played some music. Just 15 seconds of happy music caused those people to say that the happy picture was even happier, the sad picture was even sadder, and more revealingly, on the neutral picture, when they played 15 seconds of happy music, people said that was a picture of a happy face. When they played 15 seconds of sad music, they said it was a picture of a sad face. So the music was impacting how they were looking at the world around them. It not only is an expression of what's going on in people's lives, but it also impacts how you see the world around you. And I really believe that movies aren't the only things that come with soundtracks. You know, they say that when you're dying, that your life flashes before your eyes. Well, if it does, I suspect it comes with a soundtrack. Now, my mother used to love to sing around the house. Did any of you have parents who sang around the house? Yeah, a lot of you did. And that becomes part of the soundtrack of your life. Now, here's where I attempt the a cappella, so bear with me. One of the songs that my mother used to sing when I was a very small boy was, "I love you, a bushel and a peck, a bushel and a peck, and a hug around the neck. A hug around the neck." She used to sing that song all the time, and I'm sure, at least I hope it was, an expression of her love for me. She used to sing another song, which was also a Doris Day and Andrew sisters used to sing these songs. She used to love to sing. Let me get to the right line here so I sing actually the right words. Oh yeah, you'll recognize this one, especially those of you who are my age or older. Now I have children of my own. They ask their mother, what will I be? Will I be handsome? Will I be rich? I tell them tenderly, que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be. The future's not ours to see. Que sera, sera. What will be, will be. I can still hear my mother singing that song. She sang it all the time. I don't know if she was fatalistic, because that song's about as fatalistic as it gets. But, you know, those, as a young boy listening to those words, will I be rich, will I be handsome? Those are the kind of questions maybe you have when you're a little boy. Anyway, that was part of the soundtrack of her life, and because she sang it all the time, it became part of the soundtrack of my life. And I actually do occasionally sing it when I'm in the shower or in the car by myself. Now, how many of you can remember what your high school class song was? Okay, there's a few hands. What was yours that you remember? What was it? Oh, you don't remember? Oh, of course, yeah. Well, we're all getting to that. When somebody else had their hand up back, yeah. Oh, okay, you got the actual school song. Okay, yeah.
Oh. With loyal hearts we'll stand by our alma mater, Central High, for her we'll fight.
Okay, all right, excellent. Well, you remembered your school song too. I'm talking about your class song. The Manatee High class song of the class of 1972, my high school class, chose James Taylor, You Got a Friend. I'm not going to sing that one for you because it's a little too slow for me even to try to sing that one, but you remember that one. When you're down and troubled and you need some loving care and nothing is going right, close your eyes and think of me, and soon I will be there to brighten up even your darkest night. You just call out my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running to see you again. That was the Manatee High 72 class song. Now, of course, the soundtrack of your life is shaped by the generation you grew up in. That was why my mother sang those two songs that I already tried singing for you. Of course, the soundtrack in my life includes a lot of Beatles songs, also includes Clearance Clearwater Revival, John Denver, and a lot of songs like that. It doesn't include any Taylor Swift songs. Nothing against Taylor Swift, I just haven't incorporated new music into my soundtrack, at least not hers, although it's not too late, so maybe I can get a Taylor Swift song in there. Now, as a minister, I've conducted lots of funerals through the years. And when I work on a service for a funeral, I always ask the family what music they would like to have incorporated into the funeral service. And of course, usually people, obviously, they pick songs that were meaningful to the person who's passed away or somehow reflects their life. One of the people that I had a service for back in Wichita, Kansas, his name was Charles, and he was a mason, or a shriner, not a mason, he was a shriner. And one of the things that he had done in his life was he had found an old calliope, and he restored that calliope to working order, and he played the calliope at every Shriner parade. And at the church that I went to at the time, we also invited him to come to every ice cream social and play his calliope. Well, when Charles passed away, we knew that we had to include calliope music in his funeral service, so we found a tape of him playing the calliope, and that was all the prelude music for the funeral service. Now, I don't know about you, but I had never been to a service before or since that had calliope music in it. But it was perfect for his service. It was perfect for his service. Now, sometimes I wonder about people's choices at a funeral service. I remember I had a service once in Whitewater, Kansas, a little town of 700 people. And the service was for somebody who never went to church anywhere. And so being the UCC minister in town, I always got the funeral services of people who didn't have a church. The Baptist church guy didn't get those, nor the Mennonite guy. I got those. And so when I asked the family what they wanted in the service, they lifted up a secular song. And I don't have any problem with having secular songs in a service. That's fine. But the song that they selected was called Bad to the Bone. Now, I had never heard that song before, and so, of course, I had to look up the lyrics. I don't even remember who sings it now, but apparently it was a popular song. Here's the first verse. On the day I was born, the nurses all gathered round, and they gazed in wide wonder at the joy they had found. The head nurse spoke up, and she said, "Leave this one alone." She could tell right away that I was bad to the bone. Now, I thought this was a rather odd choice for a funeral service for summing up a person's life. But hey, people have odd choices on their soundtrack of their life, and so we had that song in the service. Now, you might be wondering if I've thought about my own service, and I actually have. I'm getting old enough now that this is a good idea to at least start thinking about these kind of things. And I want a couple of hymns in my service. One of them is an old-time Celtic hymn from the 1800s or 1700s. It's one of my all-time favorites. I like it even better than Amazing Grace. It's Be Thou My Vision. That is one of my favorite hymns. I like it not only because of the words, but I also like the fact that it's a Celtic tune. And then there's a more modern hymn that I like very much that I also would like included. I Was There to Hear Your Borning Cry. You may not know that one because, as I say, it's relatively new as hymns go. It's the only hymn that I've ever seen where every time it's sung in a congregation, particularly over at Faith Church, and we sang it many times through the years that I was there, it's the only hymn I've ever seen where, while people are singing it, there's always at least one or two people as I look at the congregation who actually have tears in their eyes as they're singing it. The words are just so profound. I was there to hear your borning cry. An amazing hymn. And then just this past St. Patrick's Day, I was at the Braunfels, and they had an Irish group there over from Ireland for the season. And they played a secular song that was one that struck me. I'm thinking about including it for the last song on my funeral service. It's called The Parting Glass. And the verse on that has, "Come fill to me the parting glass, good night and joy be to you all." And so I'm thinking about that for my funeral service. And by the way, I'm not kidding when I say, you know, it's a good thing to think about these things and tell someone about it, and better yet, write it down, because it makes their lives far easier if they know what you want in your funeral service. Now, my mother also, not surprisingly, included a lot of hymns in the soundtrack of her life that she would sing around the house. Obviously, she sang Amazing Grace just like everybody else does. This has to be one of the absolute best-known hymns. It's known by people who go to church and people who have never darkened the door of a church. It's used at all kinds of public functions and public memorial services like 9/11 and all of that. Everybody knows the words to it. And probably most people know the story behind it. You know, Newton, as a young man, was something of a wastrel. He joined the British Navy and he went off to sea with them. And then somehow, I don't remember if his ship got sunk or if he just deserted, but he somehow ended up on a slave ship and began working on this slave ship on multiple runs that it made. As the slave ship was coming into the United Kingdom on one of its return trips, a heavy storm arose off the coast of Ireland, and he thought the ship was going to sink. And so he started praying like crazy to God to spare his life, and he made the usual promise that you make in that kind of situation about improving his life if he would just be saved. Well, the ship didn't sink, and he looked back on that as divine intervention, or at least an opportunity to re-examine his life. And he started to turn his life around slowly but surely. He quit working on the slave ship, and indeed, he actually became a well-known abolitionist. He began speaking out forcefully against slavery. When he looked back at this stage of his life, though, he said, "I can't consider myself to have been a believer in the full sense of the word until a considerable time afterwards." But his life was changing dramatically and in some ways subtly as time went on. He actually became a minister eventually and was a minister for the rest of his life. And he actually wrote 280 hymns over the course of his life, the most famous obviously being Amazing Grace. It's estimated that that song is performed 10 million times every year. 10 million times. It's also been recorded on 11,000 albums. 11,000. Clearly, as I said earlier, this hymn is part of the soundtrack of people's lives. One of the most powerful renditions, I bet all of you saw it, either while it was on or later on in recording, was when President Obama sang Amazing Grace during the eulogy for Reverend Clementa Pinckney and the 8 church members who were brutally shot down by a white supremacist. And that eulogy was just incredible. I mean, at one point, he's just talking, and then he very slowly starts to sing Amazing Grace, and obviously the whole congregation joined in with him. I really thought that was one of the most profound moments on television I've ever seen. The Book of Psalms is a collection of hymns that the Jewish people sang in the temple. They also sang some of those psalms on their way walking to the temple while they were on pilgrimage. And I no doubt imagine they sang them in the synagogues and probably even in their homes. Psalm 98 that was read earlier, the little portion that we had of it, is a celebration for what God has done in the world as being the creator of the world. And it imagines all of creation singing together, celebrating the gift of creation. It's a response to an active presence in the world and in people's lives. And it's not the only place where people are called upon to sing a new song to the Lord. It shows up in several other psalms. Psalm 33, 40, 96, 144, 149, all talk about singing a new song. Almost every religious expression, not all, but almost every religious expression, no matter what it is, Hindu, Buddhist, Christian, Muslim, Sikh, you name it, all have music and singing as part of their celebrations. I don't think that's an accident. I know the ancient Greeks, some of the ancient Greek philosophers talked about the music of the spheres, listening to the music of creation, basically, and responding to it. And there's something quite profound about singing, especially when you're with a group of people, as we were doing earlier. Martin Luther, that great reformist, said of singing, he said, when you sing a song of faith, it's like praying twice. He thought it was twice as valuable to sing as it was to pray. I thought that's a rather amazing statement from this former Catholic monk and great reformer. It's true whether we're singing songs in the church or around the house or even in the shower. So let's use lyres and trumpets and horns and kazoos, everything we got. Sing oldie goldies, sing new songs, whatever. When I was at Federated Church in Whitewater, the conference invited me to participate in a sister church exchange program with the Church of South India. So we went to India for 2 weeks, down to the southern state of Kerala. And one of the stops that we had there, we were there for several days. We stayed in a dormitory at Bishop Moore College in the city of Mavalakara. And it was early on in the trip, so I was still recovering from jet lag, and they kept us going from morning to night visiting churches and institutions and showing us around the area. So I was really tired when I went to bed early that night, that first night at the college. And the next morning, I had not set an alarm, but I couldn't help but wake up literally at the crack of dawn. Just as the sun was coming up, the air was filled with the sound of birds singing. And these weren't little tiny little sparrows or something. I don't know, must have been huge birds because they were really, really loud. And I don't know what kind of birds they were because this was India, but they were loud. And they were singing their hearts out as the sun was coming up. And I just lay in bed listening to these incredible bird songs. And then as I was laying there, suddenly the Muslim call to prayer started blaring out from the minarets in the town. And then as I listened to that, a few minutes later, from down below the dormitory where I was staying, I heard the students at this Christian school singing Christian hymns. And it was an absolutely transcendent moment for me, just laying in bed, listening to the birds sing, the Muslim call to prayer, the Christian hymns being sung down below. And when I remarked on it to one of the school staff at breakfast, he somewhat nonchalantly simply observed, he said, yes, he said, all creation welcomes the new day. Birds, Muslims, Christians, Hindus, Buddhists, all creation welcomes the new day. So the song that we sang earlier in the service, all God's critters got a place in the choir. Some sing low, some sing higher, some sing out loud on the telephone wire. Some just clap their hands or paws or anything they got now. As long as you draw breath, it's never too late to add a new song to the soundtrack of your life. Amen.